Okay, our today's topic is The Lion and the Jewel, and it's an African drama, and it is written by Nigerian dramatist Wole Soyinka. The full name of Wole Soyinka is Akinwande Olu Ole Babatunde Soyinka. So it's a very difficult name, and I think you are already acquainted with this name and this very drama. I have already delivered several lectures on this particular text while we had normal classes in our college. Though unfortunately at present we cannot run the normal classes. We are now virtually connected. But I think we have to make the best use of our time. Otherwise we will lag behind. So anyway, The Lion and the Jewel is a comedy. Now, what's a comedy? Comedy, if you think very simply, that drama is a creation and representation of incidents and events of life in terms of theater. And in a drama, we usually find a protagonist and an antagonist. And an inevitable conflict takes place between the protagonist and the antagonist. If the protagonist becomes winner at the end of the drama, then we usually call it a comedy. But if the protagonist is defeated or vanquished or killed by the antagonist, then we call it a tragedy. Actually, this is the simplest definition of tragedy and the simplest definition of comedy. It's a comedy because you will find in this drama humor. You will find many laughter-provoking elements. You will also find that the drama ends with the ringing of marriage bell. And this drama is based on these 5 characters. Baruch, the village belle or the chief of the village. Then Sidi, the heroine of this drama. Lacunae, a semi-literate school teacher. So he is called a semi-literate school teacher. Just think of this phrase, semi-literate. That is, he is not fully literate. So this very particular term invokes, or it also evokes some curiosity in the listeners. In what sense is he a semi-literate man? So it's a matter of investigation, and we will make an investigation in his character and find the justifiability of this particular phrase that is applied in his case or in his characterization. Then Sadiku, Baruch's eldest wife. Sadiku, you know, Baruch's eldest wife. Okay. And Ailatu, she is the youngest and most favored lady to Baruch. And we will find that ultimately her place will be taken by Sidi. Now, what is the setting of this drama? We know that setting is very important because setting creates an atmosphere of authenticity in a drama. setting creates an atmosphere of credulity in a drama, because drama may bring together realities and fictions in a single canvas. It may use the color of imagination. It may stain the plot with the color of fiction, but its feet are deeply rooted in reality. So the writer's duty or the dramatist's duty is to create an atmosphere of authenticity. For that reason, he very tactfully and prudently decides the setting. If you go through this drama, you will find that the drama sets in a village, an African village or Nigerian village, Ilujinle. The name of the village is Ilujinle. Actually, the name is from African language. You know that Africa is a vast continent. It is remarkable for varieties of languages. And it is said today that more than 2,000 languages are available in Africa. Suppose Yoruba language, Igbo language, then Sotho language, Amharic language, Swahili language, Wolof language. So there are more than 2,000 languages in Africa. So Ilujinle is the word that has been borrowed from Yoruba language. It's the name of the village. Then in a kind of shift, with the action shifts from one place to another. But this very shifting does not violate the unity of place, because the whole action of the drama concentrates in a single village. The name of the village is Ilujin. And at the very outset of this drama, we find that Sidi, the village beauty, the most beautiful lady of the village, who is expected or desired by all the young men of the village, she is coming back home with a pail of water on her head that she has very nicely balanced on her head. And while she is passing by a school, village school, we find the school teacher. The school teacher, Lacunae, duckling through the window of the school. That is just like a duck, he is stretching his head through the window. And as soon as he discovers Sidi, he gives up his teaching and comes to the street. And then he starts quoting Sidi. And he expresses his desire, he discloses his desire to marry Sidi. Sidi is also initially ready to marry him, but she has got a condition. The condition is that Lacunae must pay the bride price. In Bangla, we call it Den Mohor. So bride price, the practice of bride price, is a very important practice in the tradition among the Africans. And the African society or different clans in Africa, you know that in Africa, in modern Africa, in today's Africa, you will find more than 3,000 ethnic groups of people. And all these ethnic groups of people are very much strict regarding their rituals, regarding their traditions, regarding their cultures. They are not ready to compromise with anything regarding the question of holiness or sacredity or the authenticity of their culture. They are never ready to sacrifice their rituals, their cultures. And we find a reflection of this very temperament, that is African traditional temperament, in the character of Sidi. Sidi wants to marry, but the condition that Lacunae must pay the bride price. Otherwise, she will not marry him. Actually, Sidi's rigor or rigorous temperament regarding the question of bride price takes the readers to the root of African culture. And Wole Soyinka wants to show that regarding the rigorous behavior or nature of African tradition, the Africans are not ready to sacrifice anything. So we find this very temperament in Sidi. On the other hand, Lacunae is not ready to pay the bride price. So the conflict between Sidi and Lacunae begins. Though physically we find this conflict between these two persons, it has got a metaphorical meaning. We can interpret this conflict metaphorically. Sidi may represent African tradition, and Lacunae represents a hybrid African culture. Lacunae is not totally a westernized fellow. He is born in Africa, but he has received Western education. He has learned some Western behavior and manners. He has put on Western dress, which makes him look very ludicrous. So this very man, who is a hybridized entity, is not ready to pay the bride price. On the other hand, Sidi is not ready to marry him unless and until he pays the bride price. So the conflict begins between these two persons or two aspects of African society. Wole Soyinka, you know that he was born in British Nigeria. That is, while he was born in Nigeria, Nigeria was a British colony. He was born in 1934. And you know that Nigeria was liberated, or it achieved independence in 1960. So the experiences that Wole Soyinka gathered was an amalgamation, or was a mixture, was a fusion of two cultures. One was the British colonial culture, which directly influenced or impacted the life of the Nigerians till 1960. And another culture, that is the local culture of Africa, that gradually got contaminated, or that gradually got synthesized in contact with the British culture or the colonizers' culture. So this very synthesis between the local culture and Western culture or European culture has become our focus has become an epicenter of this drama. We may question regarding Wole Soyinka's position, whether he is in favor of Western culture or he is in favor of African culture. Actually, Wole Soyinka is a citizen of the world. If you think of his world view or if you think of his philosophy, you will find that this very man is African in his color, in his complexion, but he is a man of the whole world in his attitude, in his philosophy, in his behavior. So this very discovery proves that Wole Soyinka is in favor of the synthesis of cultures. This is called the syncretic culture. That is the culture which has got the materials of different cultures in it. So while different cultures get together, there must be conflict. And if the followers of the cultures can bring about a synthesis among these cultures, then that would be the best course of life. Actually, that is Wole Soyinka's position. Wole Soyinka is not a fundamentalist regarding the question of African culture. Wole Soyinka is a global citizen. In the world of globalization, in the period of globalization, it is not possible for any nation to maintain 100% austerity or 100% radical posture, gesture, behavior, manners, etc. We have to keep our windows open. If you keep your windows open and let the outer air come in, then you will be able to lead a healthy life. If you do not open your windows and if you live in a confined room, in course of time you will be suffocated to death. This is the reality. But Wole Soyinka has also warned the Africans that while doing this synthesis or synthesizing, we must not lose our originality of culture. We must accommodate foreign culture, but we must not annihilate our local culture with foreign culture. Actually, it is a colonial practice, or it is the colonial enterprise to annihilate local culture and impose the colonizing culture upon the natives. So the natives must be alert. They must remain conscious regarding their own culture, because culture decides a nation's identity. If your culture is contaminated, your identity is contaminated, your nationality is contaminated. So culture is an indicator that will decide your position, your location. For that reason, you must not let your culture to be annihilated by the imported culture. That is Wole Soyinka's suggestion. And we find that Lacunae cannot maintain this suggestion. Lacunae invites Western culture. All right, we are in Bangladesh celebrating the first day of the year, that is Happy New Year. And at the same time, we are celebrating our Pahla Boishakh. We are celebrating our Shabe Barat, Shabe Miraj. And at the same time, we are celebrating Valentine's Day. This is called cultural hybridity. And we cannot avoid all these uh, practices. We cannot confine ourselves in our own or in our own room, the room of our culture. We have to keep our windows open. But we must be conscious regarding the cultural identity. If we lose our cultural identity, then we lose our nationality, we lose our identity. Lacunae has received Western culture, and at the same time, he has defined his local culture as primitivism, as savagery. Actually, this is the point, or this is the aspect of Lacunae's character that uh, invites the readers to call him a semi-literate person. He is not truly literate or educated. A truly educated man can bring about a balance, can bring about a very nice uh, compromise or synthesis between two different cultures. But Lacunae accepts Western culture, and at the same time he brands his local culture as a sort of savagery, as a sort of primitivism, as a sort of uncivilization. Actually, he speaks in the language, in the tone, in the voice of the colonizers who went to Africa and told the Africans that they were uncivilized. They did not have any history, they did not have any language, they did not have any texts. So the Africans should take the Western texts, the Western languages, the Western discourse, the Western narratives, Western culture, and they should be mimic men. Mimic men, it's a very popular term, and it was introduced by Babington Macaulay, who in 1935, on 2nd February, in the House of Commons of British Parliament, uh, told that in India, that is in our subcontinent, they would produce a section of people who would receive Western education. They would be westernized in taste. They would be westernized in their attitudes, in their dress, but they were Indians by birth. So his project was to produce a generation of educated people in India who would be westernized in attitude, in taste, in dress, who would behave like the Western Shahibs, who would behave like Western Mem Shahibs, but in complexion, in geographical location, regarding their question of birthplace, they would be Indians. So they wanted to produce a hybridized generation of educated people. And the people who received Western education and behaved like Western Shahibs or Western gentlemen and gentlewomen are called Mimikmen. And that very project was very common in every colony of the European colonizers. And we find the implementation of this project in African countries also. And you will find that very particular aspect of that very particular enterprise of colonial practice in this very text. That is, Lacunae has become a Mimikmen. He is an African, but he thinks himself to be a westernized gentleman. Not only that, he brands his local culture as primitivism or savagery. And while Sidi wants that she will not marry, when Sidi declares that she will not marry until and unless Lacunae pays the bride price, Lacunae very bitterly criticizes her. And Lacunae tells her that she is a savage girl. And not only that, in his attitude towards Sidi, we find that in African society, we know that the structure of African society is patriarchal. That is, father is all in all in a family. A man takes decision. A woman does not have any say in important activities or important decision making in the family. And we find the reflection of this patriarchy in Lacunae's attitude towards Sidi. Lacunae says that Sidi's brain is smaller than the brain of a man, and he has learned it in science book. So this very attitude of Lacunae towards Sidi proves that African society was mostly patriarchal society, and in patriarchal society, a woman did not have any say in any important issue regarding marriage or childbirth or the marriages of their children, etc., etc. The women did not have any say. Anyway, then we find that Sidi suddenly receives a news from some village boys and girls that her photo was published in a magazine which was published from London. So Sidi felt very excited, and while Sidi found a copy of that magazine and she discovered her photo on the cover page, she was overwhelmed. And we find a dramatic change in her attitude, in her behavior. And Sidi now looks upon herself to be a jewel of the village. She is the jewel of the village, and she is unavailable to anybody, any man of this village. So why? Actually, Wole Soyinka has meant to say that Sidi's attitude changes now because she is now looking at her life, looking her surrounding or looking at the surrounding through the borrowed eyes. And she has now borrowed the eyes from the West. Actually, the photo that is printed on the cover page of the magazine brought about a rooted change of attitude of Sidi. So why? Because Sidi is now looking at herself. Sidi is now looking at the other people through the eyes of the West. Because, camera is not an African invention. The magazine is not an African instrument of the distribution of knowledge. So this very photo symbolizes the Western eye through which Sidi is now looking at her. This is the problem of a mimic man. When a man looks at himself through his own eyes, then he develops a different view. But when he different view, and that very different view is totally uh, different from the westernized views of life. So Siddhi's view of life was totally different as soon as she saw the photo printed on the cover page of the magazine. Not only that, she also found the photo of Baruch, the village chief, who is called the lion, in the middle of the magazine, and Baruch is standing by a village latrine. So that very contrast, Baruch is a man of more than 60, that is 62, and Siddhi is a girl of 18 or 19. So while she discovers this contrast, then she feels more conceited, more proud, or she developed a false idea regarding her location in African culture. She now thinks that she does not belong to her own culture. She now belongs to the Western world, the world of glamour, the world of light, varied light. Actually, this is another problem of the psyche or psychology of the colonized. A few moments ago, Siddhi decided not to marry Lacunae without bride price. It shows that she is sticking to African culture. She is celebrating her own culture. And now Siddhi looks upon herself to be an inhabitant of a luxurious world of Western civilization, a luxurious city like Lagos, a very luxurious city of Nigeria. So this very contradiction makes Siddhi, will make her a failure in course of time. Actually, Soyinka means to say that a man's failure as an entity is usually caused by his maladjustment with his culture. If you think that your culture is uncivilization, your culture is primitivism, and if you identify yourself, if you define yourself with a borrowed culture, then you must be misguided. Because a plant which is usually nursed on a top may look very beautiful, but it does not have the strength enough to fight against the storm or stormy wind. On the other hand, a herb or a shrub may not be properly nursed, may not be taken care of properly, but it has got some strong roots that are tightly tied with the earth. So it will never be uprooted by the stormy wind. So Siddhi is neither African nor Western. She is in in-betweenness. That is said by Homi Bhabha. Homi Bhabha has defined the colonized as ambivalent entity. They always travel between to be and not to be. That is, to be a native and not to be a native. This Hamletian problem usually challenges the identity of the natives. And similarly, we find the same thing with Lacunae. Lacunae is neither an African nor a Western. He is in betweenness between West and Africa. Siddhi is also between West and Africa. And ultimately, what do we find? Ultimately, we find that both these characters fail. Sidi is trapped by Baruch, and Lacunae fails to marry Sidi. Lacunae does not, or he cannot win Sidi's hand, and Sidi cannot maintain uh, her position. She cannot maintain her pride thoroughly. She is ultimately deceived by Baruch. So, thus, this story is a metaphor of the failure of the local culture, failure of identity, failure of